Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. Today is Monday, February 23rd. This is our daily NBA show that we've been doing with Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com. A successful show overall. I'm 14-10 against the spread. Joe Duffy 16-10 against the spread. We are coming off of Friday where we both gave a loser, though. Joe Duffy, thanks for being back with us.
Well, thank you for having me, Mr. Loshak.
Yeah, well, you're 16-10 against the spread with free picks in our show so far. So just tell everyone quickly before we get into today's card what OffshoreInsiders.com is all about.
Well, 27 and a half years of experience publicly, that is, going back to the score phone days. I pick every single major American-based sport. We do, some NHL during the playoffs. Basketball, at college and NBA, we're having a great season. Joe Duffy's picks at OffshoreInsiders.com.
Sounds great, Joe. We got 8 games on the card tonight, and it's a card that I'm kind of liking, but for the purposes of this show, it's a little bit frustrating because there's a lot of picks that I'm liking a little bit. No one pick that stands out to me. The first one that's interesting is Philly-Miami. I was kind of thinking maybe the under on the overnight was a good play at 190. Now it's all the way up to 192 or 192.5. We have seen what Philly has done. They've gone over since the break, but it just seems like a play on the under. I'm also thinking about maybe an under with Houston, right? They're playing Minnesota. That's 211, very high total, and we saw how Houston has really ramped it up on defense. In their last game, they played a great defensive game, although, Minnesota, I took the under in Minnesota's game against Phoenix. That was my one loss. It was under 211.5. It was 94 at the half, and wound up going way over to 220. And then also I'm thinking, the New Orleans game is curious. I know that Davis and Anderson are out, so there was no overnight line. It opened at +7.5 against Toronto, who's struggling a little bit right now. Is that maybe a little bit of an overreaction? I'm not exactly sure. Do you have anything to say about any of those 3 picks, Joe?
Yeah, it's interesting you would mention Philadelphia and Miami first. Of course, that's the first game on the board, so maybe not that interesting. But yeah, I had definitely strongly considered the total there as well, under, and I see that the total is actually going up since I first looked at it this morning. I see, at least on my lines, it's up to as high as 192.5. And obviously the Sixers, they traded Michael Carter-Williams, so that hurts them offensively. Carter-Williams wasn't a great shooter, but he's a pretty good passer, and he was, again, a rare weapon. So just about any time anyone emerges as a weapon, he either gets hurt in the case of Roten or they trade him for hopefully a lottery pick, et cetera. And then, of course, Miami is without Chris Bosh, and as we've said, that the Heat, even going back to last year when they had the big 3, they still played that very slow pace, and that's one of the reasons why their games weren't all that high scoring, even though they had one of the great offenses of all time in terms of talent. So especially with the total having gone up, I might lean towards the under, but my play here is going to be, the free play is going to be on Philadelphia, as the Sixers are becoming, as I like to say, a dichotomous straight up and ATS team. They're 12-23 straight up, but they've actually covered 8 out of their last 10. And that makes sense. I know a lot of people are going to think, the Sixers are just going to, quit and this and that. But you have a bunch of, they're a young team. They're not a veteran team. They're a bunch of young players. These guys are fighting for their careers. And this is the best chance they have to show that they belong in the NBA. So the hunger is going to be there. The effort's going to be there. And Miami, again, they're just they're not very good themselves with not being all that healthy. It's just too many points, and I think the Sixers are just undervalued right now.
Well, right now, +11.5 is the line that we can give you that one. So just one free pick from tonight's card, Joe?
Yeah, I do. I would say one free pick. If you want a lean, especially with the total having gone up, I'd probably lean towards the under in that same game.
All right, and then do you have any thoughts on the Spurs? The Spurs, you picked against the Spurs. You like the Clippers. That was one of your recent winners. The Spurs, though, lost their first 2 since the break against the spread, and they were 2-7-1 against the spread in the 10 games leading up to the break. Utah playing pretty well. They got a nice cover in their first game back, and they're +5.5 at home. Are the Spurs maybe, possibly now a team that is almost an auto fade? Do we want to look to a fade game in and game out?
Not necessarily. When a quality team loses, that's generally when they're going to get a little bit of a wake-up call. There's no question that the Spurs, they paced themselves. We know that last year they became not the only team in the history of the NBA where nobody averaged over 35 minutes or something like that. They have a ton of depth, and now maybe they've got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. So I would say that the Spurs would maybe be more of an auto fade if they were on a pretty good winning streak where the spread were too high. But now that they've been slapped in the face a little bit, they might come out with a little bit more of a vengeance tonight.
All right, and then also I was thinking about maybe the under in Milwaukee, Chicago. Milwaukee 2 unders since the break. Remember when they went on an extended string of unders in the first half. Maybe they're going back to that a little bit. And the Bulls went over in their 1 win, but they can play low-scoring games. Maybe after that they'll come back and against Milwaukee have a low-scoring game here. The overnight was 194, and that has gone down a bit. Still, a 193 is available. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, probably because Milwaukee will very likely not have Michael Carter-Williams. He, of course, their newly acquired player from the 76ers right before the deadline. And even under the unlikely event that Carter-Williams does play, it gets back to our 1 step forward, 2 steps back theory where there could be some chemistry issues. And I would say, if anything, if some new injury information comes in about Michael Carter-Williams going to play, the total might actually go up, creating more value. So I would agree with that. I'm not one of these people who necessarily always thinks that the point guard's the most important player on the team, but he certainly is pretty important. In Milwaukee gave up some talent to get him, and they don't have anything to show for it as of yet, just because Williams hasn't played.
All right, well, you're going to give one pick, Philly plus 11.5. I have to decide whether I'm going to pass or give a pick. I'm thinking about Bulls under, Houston under. I'm thinking about Utah. I'm thinking about the Pelicans plus 7.5. Out of those 4 picks, so which would you take if you had to take one of them?
Oh, boy, let's see. Yeah, the Pelicans are a little bit tough because they are certainly dealing with their share of injuries as well. I don't know about Utah. What was the other one that you said?
Bulls under, Houston under 211.5, Bulls under 193.
Yeah, I would say probably the Bulls under because, as I said, if there's the Bulls and Oklahoma City are 2 of the possible contenders that I think have to be a little bit more in a statement mode. And as I always say, that intensity seems to show up a little bit more on the defensive end than it does on the offensive end. So of any of those plays, I would probably lean a little bit more towards the Chicago game to go under the total. I do think there's a good possibility the Bulls could be an under team. And as we said with MCW, not playing for Milwaukee, it probably will be a slow-paced game.
All right, Joe, I think I made my decision. I'm actually going to pass on both the unders in Chicago and Houston, and I think I am going to go with New Orleans as a home dog plus 7.5. Just feels like a little bit too many points. Hopefully they can keep it somehow close. The other 2, I don't know. I got burned with Minnesota on the under in the Phoenix game, even though that was looking good for most of the game. Houston, who knows if they're going to play another low-scoring game in a row or if they might go into the stratosphere against Minnesota kind of unexpectedly. All right, so I'm just going to have one play on tonight's card, New Orleans plus 7.5 at home against Toronto. You think that's an okay thing to do, Joe?
Yeah, no, it's an okay thing to do. We may actually have a pick ourselves at Joe Duffy's picks on that game among our 4 NBA winners, including a wise guy play.
Okay, so there it is. Joe Duffy taking officially just one play, Philly plus 11.5. I'm going to take New Orleans plus 7.5, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow, Joe.